Welcome back to Crimson Tide Today. I'm Zack Aitken, and I appreciate you joining me for another conversation about Alabama football. If you're enjoying the channel and you want to help it continue to grow, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share the video with a fellow Alabama football fan. And as always, guys, don't forget to head down to the comment section. I always enjoy seeing your opinions, and I want to discuss the biggest topics according to you guys surrounding the Crimson Tide. For additional Alabama coverage, recruiting news, and reactions throughout the week, be sure to give me a follow on X and Instagram at ZAkin7. There's a lot to get into today, so let's settle in and let's start the opening drive. So, one of the biggest reasons for optimism surrounding the Alabama football team heading into 2026 is the defense. This secondary, it might be the best position group on the entire roster. The defensive line, it looks deeper than it did a year ago, and the edge rushers have talent, experience, and plenty of upside. But there is one position group that could determine just how good this defense actually becomes. We've been talking a lot about the quarterback battle, but there's another position battle on this team that we need to discuss. It's the inside linebackers. Now, I know it's not a position that a lot of fans spend a whole lot of time talking about. Most conversations do center around, the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, the pass rushers, the five-star recruits. But if you've been watching Alabama over the last couple of seasons, you know just how important the inside linebacker position is in the Kane Womack 4-2-5 defense. When Alabama's defense has struggled, a lot of the issues have started in the middle of the field. Missed tackles, missed assignments, players not fitting the correct gaps inside the run. But those mistakes can quickly turn a good defense into just an average one. And when Alabama has played its best football defensively, it's usually because the inside linebackers were doing the little things right. The challenge this season is that Alabama is replacing a lot of experience. Last year, the Crimson Tide had Deontay Lawson, Justin Jefferson, and Nikhai Hill-Green leading the way. All three were veteran players who had seen plenty of football. Lawson, he was the leader on the defense. Jefferson, he provided physicality and experience, and Hill-Green, he brought stability and consistency. But now all three are gone. That means Alabama is essentially starting over at one of the most important positions on the field. The good news is that Alabama made a major addition through the transfer portal with Virginia Tech linebacker Caleb Woodson. Woodson, he arrives in Tuscaloosa with plenty of experience. He's appeared in 37 career games and he's started 16 contests over the last two seasons. At 6'3" and around 240 pounds, he has the size Alabama looks for at the position. He's got the looks, he's ready to play the part, and by all accounts, he's already impressed with his leadership qualities. But the question becomes, who's going to be starting next to him? Right now, the two leading candidates appear to be QB Reese and Caden Jones. Reese, he's an interesting player because he's been in the program for several years. He's learned behind Deontay Lawson, and he's built a reputation as one of the smartest linebackers on the roster. Coaches trust him, and he understands the defense. And I haven't been shy about QB Reese. I've said before that he has a chance to be a breakout player on this defense. But the big concern with Reese is size. He's listed at 6 foot even and 229 pounds, which that's a little smaller than most of the inside linebackers that Alabama's relied on in the past. And then on the flip side, there's Caden Jones. Jones, he's got a different profile altogether. He's listed at 6'4" and around 230 pounds, and he has excellent length, and he's got great athletic traits. From a physical standpoint, he looks exactly the type of linebacker that Alabama wants roaming in the middle of the field. The challenge for Jones is experience. Like Reese, he hasn't played in many meaningful defensive snaps during his career thus far. In fact, neither player has significant game experience. Jones logged just 53 defensive snaps last season, while Reese was only at 47. So, to me, that brings us to the wild card in this competition, and that's Luke Metz. Metz, he's made the biggest impact on special teams last season. That's where he's made his money so far, but he's a player that the coaching staff appears to like. He's still relatively unproven defensively, but don't be surprised if he's going to be pushing for a larger role as fall camp gets progressing very soon. And that's what makes this position battle so fascinating. Alabama has plenty of talent on defense. I mean, the secondary it looks to be elite. The defensive front, it should be very improved, and there are reasons to believe that this could be one of the better defenses in college football. But for that to happen, the inside linebackers have to develop quickly. The margin of error at this position is very small. I mean, if the linebackers struggle, opposing offenses are going to find ways to attack the middle of the field and expose mistakes. If they succeed, Alabama's defenses, they can have all the pieces necessary to become one of the nation's best units. That's why this position battle is a battle Alabama fans should be expecting to be paying close attention to over the next couple of weeks. It may not get the same headlines as the quarterback competition between Austin Mack and Keelan Russell, but by the end of the season, the inside linebacker room, it could be one of the biggest reasons Alabama either reaches its championship goals or falls just short of them. Alabama's 2028 recruiting class is already off to a strong start, but one of the biggest names in the state remains firmly on the Crimson Tide's radar. And based on the latest developments, Alabama appears to be in very good position. Let's talk about Birmingham safety CJ Craig James, who's one of the top defensive backs in the entire 2028 class, and a player that Alabama fans should start paying close attention to. According to recent reports, Craig James has already locked in multiple game day visits to Tuscaloosa this fall, and including Alabama's opener against East Carolina, the Florida State matchup, and the SEC showdown against Georgia. That's significant development because it shows that he's serious with his interest in the Crimson Tide. Now, before we get too ahead of ourselves, we do have to remember that we are talking about a 2028 recruit. I mean, a lot can happen between signing day in 2028 when that does come around, but when you're dealing with an in-state prospect that's elite, every visit matters, and Alabama has done an excellent job of getting Craig James back on campus over and over again. The Birmingham native, he's already regarded as one of the top safeties in the country. He's ranked among the top 100 overall prospects nationally, and he's considered one of the best players in the state of Alabama. At roughly 6'3" and around 185 to 190 pounds, it looks like he already has the size, the length, and the physical trait that college coaches are looking for in a modern safety. But what's interesting is how strong Alabama's relationship appears to be with him. Craig James, he's spoken highly of Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama coaching staff. He mentions that Alabama was one of the schools he grew up following and that he received an offer from the Crimson Tide, and that meant a lot to him. That's not something Alabama fans should just overlook. Growing up in the state and have an emotional connection to the program, that can be a very powerful factor in a recruitment. And this is exactly why these fall visits are so important. Recruiting, it's not just about facilities anymore. It's about relationships, the atmosphere, showing recruits what a game day in Tuscaloosa feels like, and of course, NIL. There aren't many better opportunities that bring in a highly ranked in-state prospect at Bryant-Denny Stadium than games like Florida State and Georgia. Those are both going to be the types of environments that people can leave a lasting impression on folks. But the competition, it won't be easy though. Craig James, he's already gotten the attention from programs all over the country. Schools like Ohio State, Oregon, Florida, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and several others are also involved as well. So elite players attract elite programs, and Alabama is going to have to continue recruiting him aggressively over the next couple of years. But here's why his recruitment feels especially important. Alabama has always built championship defenses around elite defensive backs. Whether it was guys like Minka Fitzpatrick or Pat Surtain II, the talented secondary that's currently on the roster, I mean, the Crimson Tide's best defenses have always featured difference makers on the back end. Craig James, he looks to be the type of prospect who could eventually fit that mold. He's long, athletic, physical, and he still has plenty of room to develop. Those are the exact type of defensive backs that Alabama has been targeting for years. The good news for Alabama fans is that the Crimson Tide appear to be making him feel comfortable. And the staff, they built a strong relationship. He's continuing to visit campus, and Alabama remains one of the schools that are firmly in the mix for his recruitment. So while most fans are focusing on the upcoming season, don't lose sight on this recruitment. Landing an in-state talent has always been a major part of Alabama's success, and CJ Craig James is the exact type of player that could become one of the cornerstone pieces for a future Crimson Tide defense. This recruitment, it still has a long way to go, but Alabama's positioned itself exactly where it wants to be, right in the middle of the fight for one of the best players in the state. I want to continue discussing Alabama's 2028 recruiting class since it's already shaping up to be one of the most important classes of the Kalen DeBoer era. And one name that Crimson Tide fans need to know is offensive tackle Toa Fangga. Right now, some of the college football's biggest brands are making a major push for the talented four-star offensive lineman. Alabama, Michigan, and Ohio State are all heavily involved in his recruitment, and that's usually a good sign when you're dealing with a special prospect like Fangga. And honestly, this is exactly the type of recruiting battle that Alabama needs to win. When fans think about Alabama football, they often think about the elite quarterbacks, the explosive wide receivers, and the dominant defenses. But if you look back at the greatest Alabama teams under Nick Saban, they were all built from the inside out. Year after year, Alabama won championships because they consistently signed and developed elite offensive linemen. That's why Fanga's recruitment is worth paying attention to. The young offensive tackle, he already has the size and the physical tools that schools are looking for. At a position where you need length, strength, and athleticism, where they're all critical, Fanga has quickly become one of the most sought after offensive linemen in the country. The fact that programs like Alabama, Michigan, and Ohio State are all prioritizing him, that tells you everything you need to know about his upside. But what's interesting is that Alabama isn't just in a recruiting battle with regional schools here. I mean, this is a true national recruiting fight. Michigan, they've built a reputation for building offensive linemen and playing a physical brand of football. Ohio State, they continue to recruit at an elite level nationally, and they're involved with many of the country's top prospects every single cycle. And Alabama is competing against programs that can sell development, championships, NFL success, NIL, and national exposure. But the good news for Alabama fans is that offensive line recruiting has quietly become a strength under this coaching staff. Over the last few cycles, Alabama has invested heavily in rebuilding the trenches. The staff understands that if the Crimson Tide are going to be consistently competing for SEC championships as well as the college football playoff, it all starts with dominating the line of scrimmage. And that's where a player like Fega could fit right into the picture. The reality is that Alabama's current roster, it won't stay together forever. Some players are going to graduate. Others are going to go to the NFL. Recruiting is all about planning 2 or 3 years down the road, not just for next season. That's why landing elite offensive tackles, it's so important. You can never have too many quality linemen, especially in the SEC. Every year, we watch teams with talented, skilled players struggle because they can't protect the quarterback or establish the running game. I mean, look at Alabama's season last year. Alabama's best teams, they always been able to do both, but that's because they've consistently stocked the roster with high caliber offensive linemen. Another reason this recruitment stands out is the caliber of competition involved. When Alabama and Ohio State are recruiting the same player, it's usually because that prospect has a legitimate national level talent. Add Michigan to the mix, and it becomes even more clear that Fanga is viewed as one of the better offensive line prospects in the country. Now, of course, this is 28 prospects, so this is still early, but Alabama's positioned itself exactly where it needs to be. The Crimson Tide are right in the middle of the fight for one of the nation's top offensive tackles, and that's a recruiting battle that we're going to be monitoring closely over the next couple of seasons. But as we've seen time and time again, championship teams are built up front. But pairing Toa Fangga with an already committed four-star offensive guard Anthony Blaylock Jr., that would give Alabama excellent momentum into building their 2028 offensive line class. And for Alabama fans looking for the next generation of Crimson Tide football, this is definitely a recruitment you need to keep on your radar. And continuing our Alabama football player preview series, today we're going to be taking a closer look at a player who could become a major contributor for the Crimson Tide defenses this season. Defensive lineman London Simmons. And as we get closer to kickoff, we've been breaking down some of the most important players on Alabama's roster, looking at their recruiting background, their playing style, and what kind of role they could be having in 2026. Some of the players that we've discussed, they are established stars, but others are young talents who are ready to take the next step. London Simmons, he definitely falls into that second category. After earning freshman All SEC honors a year ago, Simmons enters his sophomore season with much higher expectations. Alabama is replacing several key contributors along the defensive front, and that creates a huge opportunity for the former Mississippi standout to emerge as one of the defense's most important pieces. Let's take a closer look at Simmons and how he got to Tuscaloosa, what makes him effective on the field, and why he could be in line for a breakout season in the fall. But let's start with his background. Simmons, he arrived at Alabama as a member of the 2025 recruiting class out of Hartfield Academy in Mississippi. He wasn't one of those five-star prospects that generated national headlines. In fact, he was a consensus three-star recruit who flew under the radar compared to some of the bigger names in the class. But Alabama's coaching staff, they saw something that they liked. Defensive line coach Freddie Roche, he pushed hard for Simmons after seeing him dominate at a camp, and the Crimson Tide landed him over programs like Arkansas, Duke, and NC State. But what makes Simmons so intriguing was his combination of size, athleticism, and work ethic. Even before arriving in Tuscaloosa, he had transformed his body, he dropped significant weight while improving his quickness and explosiveness. Today, Simmons is listed at 6'3" and 302 pounds, and that's going to give him the size that Alabama wants on the interior defensive line. But now let's talk about his play style. Simmons, he's a type of defensive tackle who wins with power and leverage. He's strong at the point of attack, he's difficult to move off the ball, and he does a good job of occupying blockers. For a young player, he already plays with impressive physicality and toughness against the run. What stood out last season was how quickly he earned the trust of his coaching staff. Injuries forced Alabama to rely on him earlier than expected, and instead of looking overwhelmed, Simmons became an important part of the defensive line rotation. He played in all 15 games, made two starts, recorded 19 tackles, 1.5 sacks, two quarterback hurries, and even recovered a fumble. His performance, it earned him freshman All SEC honors from the league's coaches. That's pretty impressive for a player that many expected to spend most of his time developing. As a pass rusher, Simmons is still growing. He has the strength and motor to collapse pockets, but adding more pass rush moves in the next steps, that's going to be key in his development. That's usually the case for young interior linemen, and another offseason in Alabama's strength and conditioning program, it should help him continue progressing. So, what's going to be his role looking for this season? That's where things are going to get really interesting. Alabama lost several experienced defensive linemen from last year's team, including a couple of NFL draft picks and veteran contributors. Because most of those departures, Simmons is going to be entering the 2026 season as one of the most experienced returning players in the defensive line room, despite only being a sophomore. The expectation is that he'll be a major part of the rotation, and he could be very well be a starter on the interior defensive line. Alabama has plenty of talent up front, but Simmons has already proved that he can handle SEC football and contribute at a high level. And that's why it's such an important player to watch. The secondary gets a lot of attention. The linebackers have had several great storylines, but if Alabama's defense is going to be elite, it needs the defensive line to control the line of scrimmage. Simmons has the size, experience, and physicality to help make all of that happen. Simmons, he may not be a household name yet, but don't be surprised if that changes at the end of the season. So, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's show, but I want to hear from you. What were your thoughts on today's topics? What storylines do you want covered in a future episode? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel, and enabling notifications so you're always up to date with our Alabama football coverage throughout the season. For more Crimson Tide content between videos, including recruiting news, team updates, and analysis, make sure you're following me on X and Instagram at ZAiken7. Thanks again for watching Crimson Tide today, and until next time, roll Tide.